You know what nobody tells you about the people who retire comfortably at 50 with a paid-off house, a seven-figure portfolio, and zero financial stress? They didn't get there by making brilliant investment picks or landing some massive windfall. They got there by avoiding catastrophic mistakes that most people don't even recognize as mistakes until the damage is already done. And here's the thing, building wealth isn't really about what you do, it's about what you don't do. Because wealth doesn't evaporate in one dramatic explosion. It leaks out slowly through financial behaviors that feel completely normal, completely justified, completely fine in the moment, but compound into devastating losses over 20 or 30 years. Research from the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances found that the median American household approaching retirement age has roughly $185,000 in total savings. That's it. After decades of working, earning, and supposedly saving, most people arrive at the finish line with barely enough to fund 5 years of modest living. But here's what's fascinating. When economists at the National Bureau of Economic Research studied the behavioral differences between people who built serious wealth and people who didn't, controlling for income, education, and geography, the gap wasn't explained by what the wealthy group did right. It was almost entirely explained by what the other group did wrong. Specific, identifiable, psychologically predictable patterns that drained wealth so slowly that nobody noticed until it was too late. Stay with me, because what I'm about to walk through isn't a list of obvious mistakes like don't gamble your rent money. These are the subtle, socially acceptable, deeply embedded financial behaviors that your brain actively defends because they feel rational in the moment. They're not. They're red flags disguised as normal life, and if you can identify them now, you can reroute decades of financial trajectory before the compounding works against you instead of for you. Let's get into it. Red flag 1. Financing your identity. This is the one that destroys more wealth than almost any other behavior, and it's so normalized that pointing it out makes you sound like a killjoy. But here's what's actually happening when you finance a car, a wardrobe, a lifestyle, or an image that signals a certain status to the world. You're not buying a thing, you're buying a feeling, and you're paying interest on that feeling for years. Research from the Journal of Consumer Psychology found that people who make purchases primarily to signal status to others experience a dopamine spike at the point of purchase that decays within 72 hours, 3 days. That's how long the psychological return lasts on a $45,000 car you'll be paying off for 6 years. But the behavior persists because of something psychologists call identity-linked consumption. Your brain doesn't categorize that car payment as debt. It categorizes it as who I am. And once a purchase becomes part of your identity, questioning it feels like questioning yourself. That's why people get defensive when you suggest they didn't need the BMW. You're not attacking their car, you're attacking their self-concept. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York found that the average American carries over $23,000 in auto loan debt. And a study from Experian showed that the average monthly car payment for a new vehicle is now over $730. That's $8,760 a year going toward a depreciating asset that loses roughly 20% of its value the moment you drive it off the lot. Now run that math over 25 years. If you invested $730 a month at a 7% average return, instead of making car payments, you'd have over $570,000. That's not theoretical. That's the actual opportunity cost of financing your identity. The people who build quiet wealth by 50 drive cars that are boring, paid off, and invisible. Not because they can't afford better, because they understand that every dollar spent performing wealth is a dollar that isn't building it. Red flag 2. Treating your home as an investment instead of an expense. This one is going to upset people because homeownership is practically a religious belief in American financial culture. And look, owning a home can be a reasonable financial decision, but the way most people think about it is fundamentally wrong. And that wrong thinking leads to catastrophically expensive choices. Research from Yale economist Robert Shiller, who literally created the Case-Shiller Home Price Index, found that historically, home prices barely outpace inflation over long periods. The average real return on residential real estate from 1890 to 2024 is roughly 1% per year after adjusting for inflation. 1%. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 has averaged roughly 7% real returns over the same period. But here's where the psychology gets dangerous. Because your home is the largest purchase you'll ever make, your brain needs to justify it. So it reframes the expense as an investment, and once it's filed under investment, you stop scrutinizing the costs. The property taxes, the maintenance, the insurance, the interest payments, the renovations that you convince yourself add value but rarely return dollar for dollar. Your brain dismisses all of it because investments are supposed to cost money, right? A study from the Brookings Institution found that homeowners consistently overestimate their home's appreciation by an average of 8% annually. They think their house is making them rich when, in many cases, the total cost of ownership barely breaks even against renting and investing the difference. The red flag isn't owning a home. The red flag is buying more home than you need because you've convinced yourself it's an investment. It's buying the 4-bedroom when the 2-bedroom would have been fine. It's renovating the kitchen for $60,000 because you'll get it back when you sell, even though research from Remodeling Magazine's Cost versus Value report shows the average kitchen remodel returns roughly 54 cents on the dollar. People who build quiet wealth by 50 own homes they can comfortably afford on one income. They don't stretch for the aspirational zip code. They don't renovate for resale value that never materializes. They treat housing as what it actually is, the single largest expense of their lives, and they minimize it ruthlessly. Red flag 3. Carrying a monthly balance and calling it normal. This is the red flag hiding in plain sight because credit card debt is so common in America that carrying a balance feels like a universal experience rather than a financial emergency. But the math behind revolving credit card debt is genuinely terrifying when you extend it over decades. The average American household carries approximately $6,500 in credit card debt. The average credit card interest rate is now above 22%. And according to research from NerdWallet, if you made only minimum payments on that balance, it would take over 17 years to pay off and cost more than $9,000 in interest alone. You'd pay nearly 2.5 times the original amount. But here's the behavioral psychology that keeps people trapped. Researchers at MIT found that paying with credit cards reduces what they call the pain of paying. When you hand over cash, your brain registers loss. When you swipe a card, the pain is dulled because the consequence is delayed. Your brain literally processes credit spending as less expensive than cash spending, even when the actual cost is dramatically higher. And there's a second mechanism at work, the minimum payment anchor. When your statement shows a balance of $6,500 and a minimum payment of $130, your brain anchors to that $130 figure. It files the debt under manageable because the monthly number feels small. Meanwhile, the balance barely moves and interest compounds month after month after month. A study published in the Journal of Marketing Research found that when minimum payment suggestions were removed from credit card statements, people paid significantly more toward their balance. The mere presence of that small number suppressed repayment behavior. People who build quiet wealth by 50 treat credit card debt like a financial house fire. They don't carry balances, period. They pay the statement in full every single month, not because they're wealthier, but because they understood early that 22% interest working against you is the exact inverse of 7% returns working for you. One builds wealth, the other destroys it, and they both compound with the same mathematical indifference. Red flag 4. Lifestyle inflating every time your income increases. This is the silent killer of wealth accumulation, and it's psychologically almost impossible to resist without deliberate systems in place. Because when you get a raise, a bonus, a promotion, or a new higher-paying job, your brain immediately starts shopping for upgrades. Behavioral economists call this the hedonic treadmill. Your baseline for what feels normal constantly adjusts upward. The apartment that felt amazing when you moved in starts feeling small. The car that thrilled you for 6 months starts feeling dated. The salary that seemed incredible becomes the new minimum. Research from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that for every $1 increase in income, the average American household increases spending by roughly 70 to 80 cents. That leaves a savings rate of 20 to 30 cents per new dollar at best. And for many households, spending increases faster than income, meaning raises actually make them more financially fragile, not less. Here's the mechanism. When your income rises, your reference group shifts. You start comparing yourself to people who earn what you now earn, not what you earned before. And those people spend differently. They live in different neighborhoods, drive different cars, take different vacations. Your brain recalibrates what normal looks like, and suddenly, your increased income feels barely adequate for your new peer group. A 2019 study from Princeton found that income satisfaction is almost entirely relative. People earning $150,000 in a community where the average is $200,000 report lower financial satisfaction than people earning $80,000 in a community where the average is $60,000. Your brain doesn't evaluate income in absolute terms. It evaluates it against whoever you're comparing yourself to. People who build quiet wealth by 50 have a specific, almost mechanical response to income increases. They save the raise before they feel it. When income goes up by $500 a month, they automate $400 of that into investments before the money ever hits their checking account. Their lifestyle inflates slowly, intentionally, and only after the savings increase is locked in. This isn't deprivation, it's sequencing. Wealth first, lifestyle second, and because the money moves automatically before your hedonic treadmill adjusts, your brain never registers the loss. You can't miss money you never saw. Red flag 5. Having no defined savings rate target. Here's something that separates people who stumble into financial stress at 50 from people who arrive at 50 with options. A number. A specific, non-negotiable percentage of income that gets saved every single month, regardless of what else is happening. Most people save whatever's left over after expenses, and as we've already established, there's never anything left over. Your brain is extraordinarily talented at finding ways to spend available money. Research from Harvard Business School on mental accounting found that money sitting in a checking account gets mentally categorized as spendable, and spendable money gets spent. Not because you're irresponsible, because that's how the categorization works in your brain. But people who build serious wealth operate on a different system entirely. They've defined a savings rate, typically 20 to 30% of gross income, and they treat it as a fixed expense, no different from rent or utilities. It's not optional, it's not aspirational, it's a bill that gets paid on the first of every month before anything else happens. Research from Vanguard's behavioral finance team found that investors who set specific savings rate targets accumulated roughly 73% more wealth over a 20-year period than investors who saved variable amounts based on what was left over, even when their average income was identical. The psychology here is about commitment devices. When you define a number and automate it, you've removed the decision from your daily life. Your brain stops debating whether to save this month because the debate is over. The decision was made once, and now it runs on autopilot. If you don't have a defined savings rate right now, that's the red flag. Not because you're bad with money, but because you're leaving the most important financial variable in your life up to chance, mood, and whatever your checking account balance looks like on a random Tuesday. Red flag 6. Optimizing for tax refunds instead of tax efficiency. This one is subtle, but enormously expensive over time, and it reveals a psychological quirk that costs Americans billions of dollars every single year. The average tax refund in the United States is approximately $3,100, and every year, millions of people celebrate that refund like it's a bonus, like the government gave them free money. But here's what actually happened. You gave the government a $3,100 interest-free loan for 12 months. That's your money that you overpaid throughout the year. Money that could have been working for you the entire time. Research from the University of Chicago found that people treat tax refunds as windfall gains rather than returned overpayments. And because windfalls activate different spending psychology than earned income, people are dramatically more likely to spend refunds on discretionary purchases rather than saving or investing them. A study from the National Tax Journal found that roughly 75% of tax refunds are spent within 60 days of receipt, predominantly on consumer goods and debt payments that wouldn't have been prioritized otherwise. Your brain treats it as found money, and found money gets spent. But the real cost isn't the spending behavior, it's the opportunity cost. $3,100 invested annually at 7% over 25 years compounds to over $197,000. That's the price of celebrating your refund instead of adjusting your withholding. People who build quiet wealth by 50 don't get large tax refunds. They adjust their W-4 so their paycheck is as large as possible and their refund is close to zero. Then, they redirect that additional monthly income into automated investments where it compounds for decades. They're not trying to beat the IRS. They're just refusing to give the government free use of their money while they wait 12 months to get it back. Red flag 7. Using round numbers as financial goals instead of reverse engineering from your actual life. This one is everywhere, and nobody questions it. Save $1 million for retirement, build a $100,000 emergency fund, pay off your mortgage by 45. These are round number goals that feel satisfying and clean, but have almost no connection to your actual financial needs. And research on goal setting from the University of Pennsylvania found that arbitrary numerical targets consistently lead to either oversaving with unnecessary sacrifice or undersaving with false confidence. Here's the psychology. Round numbers feel like finish lines. Your brain processes $1 million as done, safe, enough. But $1 million for a 50-year-old in San Francisco with 2 kids and no pension is wildly different from $1 million for a 50-year-old in rural Tennessee with a paid-off house and Social Security starting in 12 years. A study from the Financial Planning Association found that people who reverse-engineered their savings targets from actual projected expenses, adjusted for inflation, healthcare costs, and lifestyle expectations, were 2.4 times more likely to report feeling financially secure in retirement than people who aimed for round numbers. The red flag isn't having goals. The red flag is having goals that aren't connected to your actual life. People who build quiet wealth by 50 have done the math backwards. They know what their monthly expenses will look like. They've accounted for healthcare, inflation, and the fact that they'll probably live longer than they think. And they've calculated the exact portfolio size needed to generate that income sustainably. That number is almost never round. It's awkward and specific and boring. But it's real, and real targets produce real results. Red flag 8. Waiting for financial confidence before taking financial action. This is the final red flag, and arguably the most psychologically devastating because it masquerades as wisdom. It sounds like I'll start investing when I understand the market better. I'll save more aggressively once I'm making more money. I'll deal with my finances when things settle down. And it feels responsible. It feels prudent. You're being careful. You're waiting until you're ready. But research from behavioral economics consistently demonstrates that financial confidence doesn't precede financial action. It follows it. You don't learn to invest by studying investing. You learn by investing small amounts and watching what happens. You don't develop savings discipline by waiting for the right moment. You develop it